The World Rally Championship has been host to many legendary cars and drivers throughout its 50-year-long history. Group B and Group A cars remain fan favorites, and it's easy to see why. Group B had fire-breathing 500 horsepower plus monsters, and Group A saw a full-blown invasion of the Japanese with their high-tech wonders. There is, however, one era that is often forgotten, and that lies right between the demise of the Group B cars and the rise of the technologically advanced Group A cars. The late 80s was quite a switch for drivers, as they had to make do with cars that had almost half the horsepower they were used to, and it took some time for manufacturers to fully exploit the new Group A rules. Gone were the days of absurd homologation specials. Instead, rally cars now looked a lot more like the cars you saw driving around in your neighborhood, and in the case of Group N, they pretty much were. Group A already had pretty strict modifications, but Group N, being a showroom stock class, barely allowed any at all. This was to dramatically bring the cost down and make rally more accessible, and this is also where we find the topic of this video. The 1989 season in Group N was mostly contested by watered-down versions of Group A cars, like the four-wheel drive Lancia Delta Integrale and Mazda 323, but also a few two-wheel drive entries like the Ford Sierra and the small but agile Renault 5 GT Turbo. The 120 horsepower turbocharged front-wheel drive hatchback had proven to be an unexpected force to be reckoned with in the asphalt rallies, drivers Alain Auriel and his navigator Gilles Timonier managing to win in France and Monte Carlo ahead of all the four-wheel drive entries. As Group N only allowed the teams to enter a limited amount of rallies, they obviously preferred these rallies as the little Renault would be severely outgunned on gravel. The competition knew this as well, and that's why most of the four-wheel drive teams opted to do the gravel rallies. So the two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive cars rarely entered the same rally events. The Renault was bound to cross their paths at some point, as there were only 3 fully tarmac rallies on the calendar, and as per rules, one overseas rally event had to be attended in order to qualify for the championship. The factory-backed Renault squad chose to enter the Rally of Australia to fulfill this demand. Alain Auriel had only done one gravel rally in his career before this event, so there was a lot of pressure. But rather unexpectedly, he hustled the small hatchback to an impressive third-place finish. Auriel's main championship rivals, Gustavo Dreyes, who won in Argentina and Finland in class, and Grégoire de Mévius, who won the Safari Rally in class, were absent from this rally, so the podium finish gave them a much-needed points haul. Dreyes and de Mévius were present at the last asphalt round of the season, however, together with Auriel, and so were an impressive amount of four-wheel drive cars. But the little Renault once again defied all expectations. While the competition suffered from reliability issues, Auriel and the Renault ran faultless and bagged another win. Renault now found themselves just 6 points behind championship leader Dreyes and within sight of an overall Group N championship win. There were also only 2 rallies left to choose from, both of which were run on gravel. When word came through which rally the Mévius and Dreyes were gonna compete in, Renault made a bold last-minute gamble to enter their car in the same one. If Auriel would finish ahead of his rivals, he would automatically be crowned champion, and Renault would have another manufacturer title to their name some 16 years after the Renault Alpine in 1973. The stage was set for a showdown in what would end up being one of the toughest events in WRC history, the Ivory Coast Rally. This was no ordinary rally at all, but rather a safari-style rally run on open roads with 87 control points over a distance of 3,528 kilometers in 4 days. The goal was simple: stay calm, keep a steady pace, and keep the car in one piece. The terrain was extremely demanding, and to make matters worse, there was a torrential downpour a few days before the event, which drastically worsened the state of the roads, and many so-called roads hardly qualified as a road to begin with. Auriel went on record stating that others might think they have better equipment, but he and his team were adamant they could complete this rally. The car hadn't broke down once, and he was sure it wouldn't break down now. And even if it did, Renault had an ace up their sleeve. Knowing that the winner takes all, they shipped a mesmerizing 5 tons of spare parts and equipment to keep the car in perfect condition. Boxes full of suspension parts, entire spare engines, dozens of mechanics. They could practically build another car with the spares alone. 3 Jeep Cherokees would function as rapid assistance vehicles should any problems arise during the day. 60 cars lined up at the starting line ready to take on the African climate. Straight off the bat, competitors started falling like flies. The extremely rough terrain was literally shaking cars apart. The tougher Group A cars were not spared of this either. The vast majority of retirements were at the hands of mechanical faults. only a few were so unlucky to crash their car as the average speed was very low. Grégoire de Mévius was one of them, as he crashed his Mazda and was out of the running for the championship. Slowly but surely, Auriel and the Renault started rising through the ranks. His pace was impressive, but the car took the most attention. Outsiders had doubted its chances at surviving this rally, but so far it was coping very well, even managing to get to the overall top 10 after the first day. He too would suffer mechanical issues, but they were all small and easily repairable. Others weren't so lucky. More and more cars were breaking down left and right, including his other rival Gustavo Treyes. His Delta broke down after his camshaft disintegrated. All Auriel would need to do now is finish the rally, and he would be champion. With just 5 control points to go, Auriel and his co-driver Timonier heard some unexpected news. They weren't just leading the rally in class, they were leading it overall. When they triumphantly crossed the finish line, they became the only Group N car ever to win a WRC event. Just 6 other cars made it to the line, 4 Group A cars and 2 more Group N cars. A total of 53 competitors had retired. The full maximum available 20 points were for Auriel and Timonier, not only cementing their first place position in the Group N championship, but also allowing them to stumble into the top 10 of the overall World Championship. History had been made, and Renault was keen on capitalizing on the exposure generated by the car's unexpected success. They made 2500 examples of the now highly sought after Renault 5 GT Turbo Auriel edition, one of which was gifted to the man that put it in the history books. The Group N Renault 5 GT Turbo is one of the most unsung heroes in WRC history. It wasn't the only lower class two-wheel drive car to ever beat the top class opposition. The Xara kit car, for example, wiped the floor with late Group A cars in Spain and France in 1999. But that was a tarmac specialized one-trick pony. The little Renault was completely out of its element, with the driver not even used to driving on unpaved roads. But despite the opposition's doubts, the lack of power and four-wheel drive, and Mother Nature giving it her all, the Renault pulled through and became a giant slayer. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and subscribe if you don't want to miss out on the next one.